DC United is one of the most decorated clubs in MLS, but apart from a 2013 US Open Cup victory, the team has been on a bit of a hiatus from their winning ways of the 90s and early 2000s. Hey everyone, I'm Colin and this is DCU TV. Since the departure of Ben Olsen from DC United's head coach position, I've wanted to explore his impact on the club over the past 2 decades and speculate a bit on what we can expect from the club going forward. So in this video, we'll look at who Ben Olsen is, how he became head coach of DC United, and we'll look at the factors that led to their gradual decline from the top of MLS. And then we'll wrap up the video looking a bit at DC United's new head coach and what we can expect from the change. To help me out, I got the help of a few friends, first being John from RFK Refugees. It's a great DC United podcast that he hosts with Ted Meyer. If you're watching this video, you've probably heard of them, but if you haven't, go check out their YouTube channel where they stream all of their podcasts, and you can find them on just about every other platform. They have just a great depth of DC United knowledge. Second, I called a photographer and fellow DC United fan, Rachel Hitchcock, to chime in as well. Be sure to give her a follow on Instagram for some great photos. I'll link both RFK Refugees and Rachel's links to all of their platforms down below in the description. Recent viewers of DC United and MLS as a whole will only know Ben Olsen as the head coach of DC United, but there's much more to his history with the club and the city than just that. After excelling at the University of Virginia, Ben Olsen joined DC United. In the 1998 season, Ben Olsen earned a starting role in midfield and would become MLS Rookie of the Year. Aside from one season on loan with England's top-flight club Nottingham Forest, Ben Olsen spent the entirety of his 12-year career with DC United, winning 2 MLS Cups, 3 Supporters' Shields, and 1 US Open Cup. Only 3 months after retirement in 2009, it was announced that Ben Olsen would become an assistant coach for DC United under then head coach Curt Onalfo. After finishing bottom of the league, Onalfo was fired from the role, and it was ultimately given to Ben Olsen for the 2010 season. Olsen was given the role despite being ruled out earlier in the process, while DC United interviewed other candidates, including Lucien Favre, who most recently was manager of Borussia Dortmund. During that time, United CEO Kevin Payne told the Washington Post, quote, "I don't think he's ready. It's been a great experience for Ben, and I'm sure he will learn a great deal over the next couple of years. I fully expect Ben to be our head coach someday." Ultimately, the reins were handed to Ben Olsen, but despite winning 11 trophies in his 12 years as a player for DC United, his 10 years as manager would bring only 1. In a 2017 interview with Pablo Maurer, Ben Olsen said, "I never wanted to coach. As a player, I looked at these coaches and I was like, why would these guys put themselves through this? You could see it on their faces. They were just worn down." When Olsen took over in 2010, the team was coming off of a last place season. However, only 2 years in, Olsen picked the team up off the bottom, and in 2012, United finished second in the Eastern Conference and third overall in the league. That is, only to fall right back down in a historically bad 2013 season. 2013 saw DC United once again bottom of the league, and the icing on the cake being DC United's leading goal scorer, Own Goal, with 4 goals, beating 3 players with 3 goals apiece. Just as quickly as they fell, in 2014, DC United bounced back to be top of the Eastern Conference and third overall in the league, Ben Olsen earning MLS Coach of the Year. Over the next 6 seasons, DC United would hover in the upper half of the league, with the exception of another poor 2017 season, where the team was bottom of the Eastern Conference once again. It was in that time that the term Benny Ball began to be thrown around to describe Olsen's pragmatic and defensive style of play. The team would bunker down a lot on defense, conceding lots of possession and shots, all in an effort to grind out results against superior opponents.
He had a siege mentality. He understood when to batten the hatches down and get points. Fans, may not have really appreciated that, particularly after having seen it so long and also having resorted to it probably too many times. But Ben Olsen, in a good year, could just shut things down and guarantee himself points. It wouldn't be pretty, it wouldn't be attractive soccer, there wouldn't be a lot of goals, but the defense would shut down and the team would somehow get into the playoffs. This happened year after year. It doesn't happen by accident, and all coaches can't do it.
The epitome of this came in a 2015 victory for DC United, where they were outshot by Montreal 25-1, but still managed to win the game 1-0. Come 2020, United fell back to their losing ways, largely in part to injuries to key players, including Paul Arriola and record signing Edison Flores. And then, after a string of 7 winless games, it was announced on October 8th, 2020, that United would relieve Ben Olsen from his position as head coach.
For any manager to last 10 years at a team, they have to be doing something right. There's just no way to last that long and not be doing something right. So the question is, what did Ben Olsen do well as a coach at DC United? Man management, I think, is probably his most famous or most renowned positive trait. There's negative ones, I think, that have persisted, but as far as what do we know about Ben Olsen, that we know that his players generally liked him. There were obviously some cases where that was not the case. There were some players who left and maybe had a sideways word to say about how he ran the team or practices or tactics, but for the most part, the locker room was tight. The locker room was together and not very leaky. We weren't hearing a lot of things about dissatisfied players and players wanting coaches to move on. There has to be something about the way that you manage people, keep them engaged, keep them challenged, keep the mentality high enough. I think that's a talent. A lot of coaches don't have that. You can look at big teams across the world and see when results go bad, you start hearing stories come out of the locker room. You start seeing players sulk more. Was not the case with DC United pretty much through the entire tenure of Ben Olsen.
Throughout his time as head coach, Ben Olsen would overachieve given the resources made available to him. For numerous years, DC United's salary spend was in the middle to lower half of the league, yet they consistently qualified for the playoffs, although rarely progressing very far. In 2020, DC United's salary budget went up quite a bit. They were 13th out of 26 teams at $10.91 million, but that was still below the league average of $11.56 million.
He understood the resource constraints that DC United was under. That was the case from when he took over. From Kurt Onalfo in his first year with half of a year of assistant coaching under his belt. He knew that they were an RFK, they had no money. Then he knew that Audi Field was coming soon, and they don't have any money then. So he understood that basically the ownership was not going to be like the ownership of Atlanta United or Seattle or Toronto or any other big spending teams that he had to face on a week in, week out basis throughout his career. And he didn't complain. He wasn't in the media talking about how if I only had this, I could be playing in a much different way.
As Pablo Maurer said in his article on The Athletic, Olsen's departure from DC United is probably overdue in many ways, but his departure alone won't solve anything for DC United. It's the club's turn to evolve. I can't echo his sentiments more. The club has hit and missed on many budget signings in recent years, but in order to compete in the current MLS environment, they have to hit on bigger on-field moves. Edison Flores could have been that in 2020, but because of pandemic and injury, the whole year was really thrown out of whack. But then you think about the fallout of the sale of Lucho Acosta to PSG, where the club could have profited in millions, and as well as Wayne Rooney leaving on a free shortly thereafter, the club has lost the ability to gain a lot more resources that could have gone to scouting and player development. That overachieving underdog mentality became part of the ethos of DC United over the past decade, with hardworking, talented players knowing how and when to perform at their best, thanks to the leadership and motivation of Ben Olsen. However, since the introduction of Audi Field, the team's identity has changed a little bit. With Wayne Rooney and Lucho Acosta playing at their best in 2018, the team was playing really attacking soccer that was really exciting for fans. However, since the departure of those two players, the team went back to their gritty ways a bit, especially in 2020, with injuries and other factors. The team was often playing players out of position, which led to more and more inconsistent performances, and now the team looks for a new head coach to bring back their past consistency. Now DC United's future on the field is at the hands of Hernan Losada, which is a relatively unknown name to many fans, but as with Ben Olsen, it's not solely on Losada to turn the club around, it comes from a holistic effort from top to bottom.
Losada was uniquely positioned to create a true feeder organization for world-class soccer within the US. The talent coming from the DC United Academy is evident in the young players' appearances this season, largely due to season-ended injuries for starters, but these young guys showed up and made for entertaining games and great goals. In addition to doing so at DC United, the players and coaches should enhance community outreach and harness the talent at the youngest levels, which is necessary to create and maintain top flight players. This is an investment good both for the short and the long term. In the short term, it helps the team and lets them get some wins. In the long term, it creates an opportunity for Washington, D.C. to be a hub of really great world-class soccer players.
With Losada, we can expect DC United's style to change a bit. He's talked about how he looks up to Marcelo Bielsa and Diego Simeone and has this idea of how the team should play, energetic, pressing, and you can see that in the team he managed in Belgium, Beerschot, where they were promoted from the second division to Belgium's first division. They were leading the first division, I think it was 13 games into the season, and they were a high-scoring but high-conceding team. So the team is willing to give up goals in exchange for creating a lot of chances for them to score. As far as how the team lines up, Losada typically lined up Beerschot in a 3-5-2. He may have to change that with DC United, he may not. There's been a lot of back and forth I've seen of people saying that DC United doesn't have the roster for it, some saying that he does. I think that DC United really does have pieces in the team that can suit Losada's style really well. You look at Areola and Gressel, who make ideal wingback candidates. They can cover defensively, they can serve the ball well, they can be attacking threats. You have a guy like Flores who can run around at a high pace of play. He can press, same with Assad. And then you have Donovan Pines at center back, who can definitely provide a lot of cover for the other center backs like Birnbaum and Briand, who aren't quite as quick. Additionally, Losada's Argentinian roots, his ability to speak English, Spanish, and a few other languages will definitely be positive in the locker room to be able to bind all of these players together. Outside players that he brings in new, making them feel at home right away, and then the current players all making them gel really well.
It very much seems like this is going to be a year in which we move along generally with the same roster. Hernan tries to put his stamp on the team, and then the next 2 years are when we spend the money to build the team around his vision. So what does DC United need to do? They need to actually back up on that with money in the next 2 years when it's available. As the training facility comes online this summer, as hopefully fans return to the stadium, hopefully, revenue should change. Revenue should go back up, so that should no longer be at issue for this team. The thing that Ben Olsen didn't have is the backing. That was always the excuse that you could use for why the team didn't produce or look the way you wanted it to look. We have hired a manager who talks extensively about the desire to be an attacking soccer team, the desire to provide excitement for fans, for supporters, to win a game 5-4 instead of 1-0. So that's in the door. That's great already. Fans are excited for that, particularly after the years of very results-oriented soccer that sometimes didn't actually even come to fruition. So I think that the team understands that. Half of this problem here was mentality and the sort of what you were setting out to do and being positive and being aggressive, and the other half of the equation, which is probably as much or maybe more important, is bankrolling that confidence and that aggression.
As we wait to see what this new era of DC United will bring, we can only hope that it will bring a return to DC United challenging for trophies. And with that, I want to thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like and consider subscribing. Follow DCU TV on Instagram, where I post a lot more regularly. And if you like posters like this one, you can check out my Etsy shop where I design them. The link is in the description below.